Ralph.
And Mr. Shadow here, your most evil host ever, along with his evil partner in crime.
Anywho, our question of the day is, does violence in media cause violence in real life? And I'm going to start by covering the video game aspect of this. Back in the 80s, people were always questioning, oh, is my kid spending too much time in the arcades? And arcades had this negative stigma to them. That's where, gang members hung out, drug addicts, whatever. And then this kind of really kicked off in the 90s with things like Mortal Kombat, things with, Night Trap also. And this is when the ESRB was created. And the ESRB was created simply so the government would not interfere with game developers. Because that's the thing with any media. They don't want government involvement. And the government basically said, hey, either you have to do something or we will. And obviously, the game industry did what they needed to do. And, that's been a thing ever since. And one thing I will say is that the news is always really quick to use games as a target whenever there's a school shooting. Whenever there's a shooting in general, they always say, oh, the person had an obsession with this, an obsession with that, and therefore that's why they went out and decided to shoot a shitload of people. And I gotta call bullshit on that. I would say they've been doing this since the Columbine shooting because Eric and Dylan were fans of Doom. But people also don't look into the grander issues that, these people had. In the case of Eric and Dylan, I'm by no means saying what they did is okay because it sure as hell isn't. But they had a lot of problems that, they were picked on. They had... I believe Eric or Dylan, or one of the two, had depression. They were put on medicine for it, stopped taking it. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've looked into the matter. But I have to say it's nonsense. And now, while they have found that there's some kind of connection in the brain when exposed to violent video games, they do not know exactly what all that entails. So until they find out, I have to call bullshit on that. And what do you have to say for the other aspects of entertainment?
Yes, like my partner here, video games been given a lot of heat for being too violent, but so have been horror movies. Or movies that pertain violent, like historical movies as well. For me, whenever I watch a horror movie, I don't watch it just to see people get killed. I watch how creative they are. Take Friday the 13th, the original one. They took a beautiful place where people go to have fun, and then turn it upside down to a place where, oh man, this could really happen. It could really happen, but nobody ever wants it to happen. So they create something that shows what would happen. So it basically, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but to me, horror movies and horror games are there just to bring out the imagination of people. They don't inspire people to go out shooting nobody or killing nobody. Of course, there are some crazies that do watch it and emulate them, but that's because they have some weird diagnosis. Pardon me for messing that up. I'm not... You see, for me, I have dyslexia. But does that mean that I'm violent and I go out doing this stuff? No. I have trouble reading, and that's why I like movies and stuff, because I don't really have to read nothing. But it's kind of hard that good horror movies get slandered for doing something that everybody likes. Like, when that one... I'm trying to think. Do you know the guy that was harping on all the Friday the 13th?
No, the only person I can think of, like, what comes to mind when I think of people, like, harping, like I said, on the video game aspect, a lot of you will remember Jack Thompson. He kind of really tore into things like Grand Theft Auto and Bully. Though I'm not sure what my friend here is, who he's talking about. If you know, let us know in the comments.
It was that fat guy that had, like, gray hair with glasses, that, like, was talking about a whole bunch of stuff about Friday the 13th like it's a horrible piece of trash.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is that these movies, as from like a filmmaking perspective, they're not supposed to be like expensive or, you know, that's why there's so many cliches out there. They're kind of just budget films, but they're fun to watch. It's not something with a deep, sophisticated plot to wrap yourself in. It's something you can grab a beer and kind of just watch casually without having to think too much.
It's not like a freaking drama with all these hidden subtext.
Exactly.
Oh, like, ooh. Like that type of stuff. Like, it's not supposed to, like, tug at your heartstrings. It's supposed to take you on, like, a roller coaster ride. Like, there's some downs and there's some up. That's what a horror movie is, a roller coaster. It's not supposed to be some thinking process where you discuss. You're supposed to discuss, oh man, did you see how this one person got it? Man, that's something I haven't seen. Like when Jason in part 3 crushes Rick's head and his eye pops out. Like, you cannot really do that in real life. If people could do that in real life, then you would have people freaking trying it on watermelons and stuff, or some poor dummy, not a real person.
Yeah, and that goes back to, you know, people are trying to limit what game designers can do, what movie makers can do. And a lot of times when something doesn't come out the right way, and I'm not saying that, you know, designers and movie makers, you know, don't cheap out on some things, because they most certainly do, but I feel like a lot of it has to do is they don't want bad publicity, because in this day and age, word of mouth spreads faster than it did, you know, back in the 70s, back in the 80s. If something is bad, the word is going to get out there. And for these smaller companies, like, I'm going to take Platonic Games, for example, with Yooka-Laylee. They had JonTron doing some of the voice acting, and that was ultimately taken out due to things that JonTron had said. Now, from the perspective of Platonic Games, I can understand this completely. They're new. They don't have, you know, the kind of budget that other companies have. Their success is kind of, you know, hanging on the thread of what people are saying. And, you know, people will get mad over anything. Now, I don't agree with what JonTron said. Most definitely not. And if, you know, those kinds of things were being said in the game, I would completely understand as to why it would get pulled, regardless of what people would say. But at the same time, it just seems kind of silly to me to take things out, you know, because it might step on someone's toes in an indirect way. I just don't see the point in that. Blast me all you want. I'm sorry. I just can't see it.
It's the same thing with, like, certain types of horror movies. Like, for me, I don't like the old style. I don't like it because when I watched it, I was scared shitless of it, and that prompted me to hate it. That doesn't mean it was a bad movie. It was a good movie. I just hated it because of how scared I was of it.
I guess that was your same deal with the Saw movies as you told me.
Well, I don't like it. See, I like blood and guts, but I don't like it 24 hours in a movie. Like with Friday the 13th, when it calls for blood, they deliver. But Saw, man, that stuff was, for me, that was gross.
Like, it's kind of like it was, like, they focused so much on that aspect of it. It's kind of like that was the selling point of it, and I guess you maybe feel, the plot was a little bit...
there was another horror movie where, I don't remember the name, but this guy was strapped to a chair, and this other guy that paid to, like, torture this person cut his tendon with a, not like, it wasn't gardening shears, it was sort of like a thing you would cut like a small tree with, and cut his tendons in the back of his legs. Like, for me, I like how they did something like that in Evil Dead, the first one, where she gets stabbed in like the tendon, but the way they cut his thing, it was like too realistic. Like, I know you could stab somebody the same way, but in a way they took, like with Saw and that one, they just took it way too far and focused way too much on that, and it hampered the story. Like, Friday the 13th had a beautiful story, beautiful setup, and a good plot. A mother getting revenge at the loss of her own child. But what does Saw have? All it has is like guy punishing these people for stuff like, oh, like you cheated this guy out of something, or you're a drug addict. Like, and just torture them in so many ways, or have somebody that did wrong to you strapped up and you had to make a choice of either let him die or save him.
Yeah, it's mainly just blood and guts and mindfuckery. Now the Jigsaw Killer had cancer, and that was sort of his reason for doing it, but I still feel like, I don't know, that almost felt like an afterthought. And we're gonna have to cut it short here, but let us know what you think. Does violence in media translate over to the real world, or are there other factors that people really just don't take into consideration? And also, do these developers, whether it be for a video game, a movie, do they have some kind of moral obligation to adhere to some guidelines, and not just go all out when it comes to things like blood, guts, sexuality? Let us know in the comments section. But anyways, this has been Ralph. Peace out.
I guess you want to add something. Here's another question for you guys. How many people you told about you liking horror movies or horror anime? How many people tell you, like, why do you like that stuff? Like, put down how many people say that. Like, ask you how many times that stupid question down below. I'm Mr. Shadow, and you're my partner in crime.
Alright, yeah, and stigma might also be something we need to discuss, but until then, see y'all later. Ralph.
And Mr. Shadow here, your most evil host ever, along with his evil partner in crime.
Anywho, our question of the day is, does violence in media cause violence in real life? And I'm going to start by covering the video game aspect of this. Back in the 80s, people were always questioning, oh, is my kid spending too much time in the arcades? And arcades had this negative stigma to them. That's where